Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming to hear another episode of Financial First Aid. Today, I have the pleasure of having Anna Kelley, who is a three-time Amazon number one best-selling author and frequent guest on real estate investing podcasts. She speaks at REI groups around the country on buy and hold investing, multifamily investing, vacation rentals, creative financing, flipping, the unique challenges of being a woman in real estate, and making wise, conservative real estate investment decisions that will last through every market cycle. Anna has coached many new investors through the purchase of their first rental properties and flip projects, and enjoys helping others to overcome their fears, increase their knowledge, and minimize their risk in real estate. She started with no money and climbed out of the 2008 crisis to create financial freedom through real estate investing. She is passionate about helping others to do the same. I love the name of the book you co-authored, Resilience, Turning Your Setback into a Comeback. And that's exactly what Financial First Aid is all about. Thank you for being on Financial First Aid and welcome to my podcast.
Thank you. It's my honor to be here with you today, Vera.
Thanks. Let's start by you giving the name of your company, because I like the name of the company.
Yes, it's Greater Purpose Capital, where we really buy in apartment communities to not only create strong returns for our investors, but most importantly, really to create a meaningful impact in the lives of our residents of those in our apartment communities.
Oh, wow. That's good. That's good to know. And what motivated you to begin your journey of entrepreneurship?
Oh, wow. Initially, I would say in 2003, when I held my very first baby in my arms, all of my drive and determination to climb up the corporate ladder and, become somebody went out the window, and they were replaced by just mama wants to nurture this baby and I want to stay home with them. Right. And at that time, my husband had just been out of chiropractic college for a few years. He made about a third of what I made, and he had a six-figure school loan. So I had to keep working. We had bought into the American dream that we needed a car before we had a baby and a house before we had a baby. So we had a school loan and a mortgage and a car payment, and I needed my income. And I said, I have to figure out a way somehow to reduce my work hours so I can spend as much time as possible with this little baby. And I was on bed rest, Vera, for my pregnancy, so the end of it. And I watched a whole lot of HGTV when the very first Flip This House shows started to come on.
Right.
And they convince you flip one or two houses and you've got six figures, no problem. And it's easy peasy, right? So I'm like, how hard can this be? So with the 3-month baby and his little pack and play, we bought a house and decided to try to flip a property with our newborn right before I went back to work. And that started my real journey of buying real estate as an investment rather than just buying, a small condo and buying a house for kind of speculative purposes.
Okay. And what was your career path before that? What were you doing?
Sure. So I started out my career with Bank of America in their private banking department. And so I went through a couple of years of investment advisory training, and we worked with our top banking clients to talk to them about, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, annuities, insurance products, and how the bank could help manage their wealth. And so that was the first time I really had any kind of training on investments and financial literacy, right? And it opened my eyes to thinking about one day, if I ever get money, what do I do with it to make more, right? And to preserve it. But I realized I'm teaching all these people what to do with their money, but I don't have any myself, right? Through all that training and through college, I never had a personal finance class. I never had a budgeting class. Right, and I never certainly learned anything about real estate. So I knew because of my career, one day if I can ever figure out how to build wealth, I'll know what to do with it. But very little personal education there. I went from Bank of America to AIG a few years later, and I started at AIG developing training and delivering training on annuities and variable products to insurance professionals and customer service agents so that they could learn how to add annuities to the insurance that they were selling. And from there, that began a 20-year career at AIG, where I worked in product development, and we developed products for super ultra high net worth individuals with unique and complex investments like hedge funds and syndications.
Wow. Okay. So, what was kind of like, once you did make that transition to starting to get involved in real estate, kind of what was that motivation to keep you focusing on that, even though you were working your 9-to-5 job?
Yeah, definitely my baby. I cried, Vera. I cried every day going to work and dropping him off at the daycare. I just thought my baby won't be okay unless I'm a stay-at-home mama. You know, we have that mother's guilt and we just feel that it's not good enough and they need more. And I started really resenting that I had to go to work, this career that I absolutely loved. It was like, how can I have it, but be home with my kiddo too? Right. And so I was so motivated to, I want to do well. I want to be successful, to do well for my children. Right. But I really want more time with them. And so I knew that if I didn't do something different than just going to work every day, I was never going to have the opportunity to be home with them for years. And so I had this harebrained idea, you know, newly married for a few years. And I said, honey, stop working for other doctors. Give me a couple more years here. We'll pay off your school loan and then you'll start your own chiropractic business. And once you're an entrepreneur, I can stay home with the babies. And then when they're grown, I'll go back to work. Right. I didn't know he wasn't a businessman and he wasn't meant to be a businessman and he didn't want to be a businessman. He just wanted to be a doctor. Right. So I kind of drug him to Pennsylvania and said, the flipping thing didn't work real well the first time. So we thought flipping isn't where it is. We lost money the first time because we didn't know what we were doing. Right.
But and you were watching HGTV.
As we were watching HGTV. And he was like, we're never doing that again, because during that flip, it took a year to get it done and sold.
Okay.
He lost a job. We had 2 mortgages, a 6-figure school loan and a car payment and a baby and one on the way.
Oh,
and he said, we're never doing that again. So I was like, okay, well then entrepreneurship. That's the way you're going to get me home. So we moved to Pennsylvania. And when we moved here, my company first said no, they wouldn't let me work from home. They had no work from home employees out of over 10,000 employees. It just wasn't done, right? In 2000.
And kind of what year was that, Anna?
That was in 2007.
Right. Okay.
So we got through the flip property. We had a small rental in the back of that flip property. So I had been a landlord kind of by inheriting the flip, right? But we just kind of put real estate on the back burner at that time. And as we were looking for places for him to lease space as a chiropractor, convinced that entrepreneurship was the way, I noticed that there were several buildings for sale. And in these small towns, there's a business on the first floor and then there's apartments above it. And this building had apartments behind it. So I said, you know, honey, if we buy this building instead of lease it, we could always move into one of the units upstairs if we need to. And the tenants will help pay down the cost of the property and it'd be cheaper than leasing space. So why don't we just buy it and we've had one tenant before, we'll be landlords. So that was kind of the motivation. We sold the house. We took a big step back, moved to Pennsylvania to start his business and bought that one property. And then a year later, we saw a 4-unit for sale. And I said to him, why don't we buy this little 4-unit? Because we lived at home with his mom and dad for a year. When we first moved here, it was a big step back, right? But I thought AIG might not let me keep my job. I got 3 months to prove that I can do it. And then I got 6 months to the second probationary period. So let's move in with parents. And then once I knew they said, okay, you can keep your job. They made it permanent. Then I bought a 4-unit and we moved in with our family of 4, had a new little daughter, into a little tiny apartment and had 3 tenants at our door every day. And we learned how to become landlords.
Okay.
And that's how our journey to entrepreneurship and our first few real multifamily rentals started.
Beautiful. What a great story that is. So for anyone who may have been living under a rock in 2008, tell tell my listeners what was happening in the world of real estate in 2008.
Hmm. Everything collapsed. At the end of 2008, there were starting to be rumblings, right? And by the beginning of 2009, real estate was collapsing, as well as very large financial institutions like the one I worked for, AIG.
Yes.
So essentially, what happened is for years, real estate was overpriced, and there were a lot of new real estate flippers buying up properties and overpaying. Lots of new first-time home buyer programs that allowed people to buy houses they really couldn't afford. And then you had appraisers that were way over appraising things. And so all these loans started being done that weren't super high quality loans. And then they were being packaged and sold as a security together on the secondary market, right? And then companies like mutual funds buy them up, and REITs and things of that nature. And what happened was they figured out there was a lot of fraud in the mortgage process and a lot of loans that claimed to be, really safe type A paper were really, really bad loans. And so slowly prices started coming back down. People were defaulting and foreclosing. And then you had companies like AIG that provided the mortgage insurance. So when the property started to get foreclosed and real estate values started coming down, then my company was on the hook to make whole the investors of those loans. And what really made things complicated, Vera, and what opened my eyes to the real complexity of the American financial system is that all of these different companies were banking on and betting against mortgages. And so they were basically shorting mortgage-backed securities. And then we had another type of insurance, which was insurance on the value of each other's companies. So one financial company invested in the stock of another, and they invested in the stock of another. And when one went down, all of them started to go down. And then they said, we want our insurance payout. AIG couldn't pay. So you saw just a domino effect of financial companies going out of business and collapsing, of mortgages going into foreclosure, and of real estate values crashing. And so for us, it was like we started this business at the height of the economy, and everything, we knew was collapsing around us. I lost about 2/3 of my 401k because retirement accounts were really hit very, very hard when this domino effect happened throughout the US economy. And then, we had the risk of being real estate investors when real estate was going down too. So it was definitely an eye-opening experience for me. One of the hardest year and a half periods I probably ever lived through. But I'm so thankful I lived through it because I learned so much that prepared me for this pandemic and what we dealt with, in real estate and for the future as well.
Wonderful, wonderful. So how did you pivot out of that whole situation? Like, what was your strategy to kind of say, okay, the whole world is falling down around me. What am I going to do now to deal with, the possibility of the AIG job not being there? Because, of course, that was your safety net for.
Oh, yes.
If the real estate thing didn't really, jump off like you wanted it to,
right?
You always had that job, but then even that was in jeopardy. So what was kind of your strategy to say, okay, we're going to regroup, retool, let's plow through this? What happened?
Yes. I wish I could tell you that I was really strategic and I had a really great blueprint. But the reality is I had about a week or two of just boo-hoo, crying in my tears, wallowing in the mud, and not knowing how in the world I was going to get out. And I just said, AIG was telling us, you're probably going to lose your job. We were seeing department after department close and being sold to pay back the multi-billion-dollar government loan that they were paid to bail them out so that it kind of stopped the bleeding of more companies falling.
Right.
And so I knew my job is going to be gone. My only hope was I knew if I got laid off, I had a little bit of a severance package that would sustain us for a few months, as long as they didn't take that away, right? Mm-hmm. But the week that I looked at my 401k and realized I've lost about 2/3 of it, and it's probably not coming back because these companies were closing their doors. I also found out I was pregnant with baby number 3. And I just was an emotional wreck. I was losing the job. I knew it would impact my husband's brand new business. We had all this debt from starting the business, and real estate was collapsing. And I'm like, are tenants going to be able to pay rent? I really didn't know what I was going to do. And so I do what I always do when difficult things happen. And I just said, I need to just calm myself down. I need to quit overthinking it. I can't change it. I can't change, react just based on fear, because I was afraid. I was so afraid, we're going to lose everything. But also, Vera, I grew up in Section 8 housing. And so I had seen having nothing, and I had seen having a fine house and cars and the perfect little, American dream, newly married and all this stuff. And I learned that I truly could be content no matter what my financial situation. And I think the ability to pull myself back and say, what's the worst thing can happen? I can lose my job. I can move back in with my in-laws if I had to. We could shut down the business. Yes, we might go bankrupt, but we're not going to be on the street, right? So I just need to do one day at a time, take a deep breath, pray, and go, okay, what do I do next? And just trust God with the rest, right?
There you go.
So when I finally, let myself go, okay, now what do I do? Because I didn't want to react in fear.
Right.
I looked at my 401k and I said, I have $50,000 left. I don't remember the exact number, but it was about 50 grand. And I saw another 4-unit property across the street from where we lived, the 4-unit. And I said, well, if I take this money out of my 401k, which I'm trained never to tell your clients to touch money from a 401, never pull it out, right? But I knew that didn't work real well with my 401k. It's gone and it's not coming back. I decided I can't withdraw it, so let me just borrow against it. So I took a 401k loan as a down payment on a 4-unit building, because I said to myself, if I don't take it out now, it may all be gone next week, because we're in a national crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I put it down on this property, I'll make another $1,200 to $1,500 a month, and that'll cover the diapers for the new baby and food on my table if I lose my job. And at least will be our basic needs, shelter and food, would be met. And that's really, when you're in financial crisis, I need food and shelter, and we need love. And my husband and I cried and cried. We're like, as long as we stick together, we have food and shelter, we're going to be okay. So that's what I did, Vera. I bought another 4-unit because I realized my job that I thought was safe, even one of the largest companies in the world, wasn't as safe as I thought it was.
Right.
This economy that I thought was booming, and I thought I knew a lot about, but I realized I didn't, wasn't safe. And entrepreneurship for a brand new business during a financial collapse isn't safe. And the only thing that was doing well was the 2 buildings I own. So I bought a 3rd one. And it was that same motivation. If I get laid off, at least I'll be with my babies. We'll have a roof over our head and we'll be okay. And it was really just that compelling why. It's all about the kids, that ability to stay content in any situation and just make the best decision that I knew how to do, and just, trust that it was going to all work out okay. That was my only strategy.
And it did, actually.
Thank the Lord. Yes.
So you helped thousands of individuals kind of build their own real estate business. What would be kind of the number one piece of advice that you would give them to help them start a new business or increase the existing business that they have, expand their existing business?
Yeah. I think really, without it sounding cliche, right? Simon Sinek, I think, has a book that's called Finding Your Why.
Right.
I haven't read the book, but I heard him speak one time, and I thought that's a good way to term having a really strong vision, right? It's having a really compelling why, a compelling purpose, a compelling reason for doing your business, a compelling reason for existing. Mm-hmm. If you don't really have something that compels you every day to, walk through the mud, to climb every hurdle, to get back up every time you're knocked off the horse, as we say in Texas, life, when it throws you really hard hurdles, you will quit because it is just too hard. Mm-hmm. And we tell ourselves, because we don't have the experience of going through those hurdles, that we don't know how to handle this. We can't do this. It's too hard. I don't know what to do. I've never been here before, right? And I think for me, if you are driven with a passion to succeed in a certain area because it's what you're designed and purposed to do and it's compelling you, you are going to have the courage to step out in faith and do whatever you can, one decision at a time, to overcome the next obstacle and the next obstacle, and to be fully committed that come hell or high water, whether it takes a year or 10 years, you are going to achieve the vision and the purpose that you have for yourself. So it's really just that.
Fantastic advice, because I think so many times, sometimes people hang in there for a minute, it's a year or 2 years or something, and they get discouraged. And instead of them looking, forward looking, and as you say, keeping that purpose like the center of what it is they're doing, they're that close to reaching their goal, and then they give up.
Yes.
And then that's the end of their entrepreneurship journey.
Yes.
And then they kind of live in that what if kind of mindset.
Oh, yes. And Vera, let me just tell you, I didn't just wake up and know that this was the answer and the strategy.
Right.
I learned it because I did give up on myself a few times. I gave up on the vision a few times because everything I tried seemed to be met with the next hurdle and the next hurdle. And I finally was like, why am I doing this? Do I have what it takes? Is it worth it to keep going? And I didn't know. And one time I needed about a 6-month, just a mental and emotional break and regrouping to go, I need some time to just be, not buy anything else, not work on another property, not think about anything, and just be and step back and enjoy not having to do and figure it all out. Okay. I had a 4-year period where I didn't buy any real estate because not only did that crash happen, Vera, but after I bought that third building, all the banks told me no. I'm like, I know the way, I'm going to buy more real estate, but I couldn't figure out how to buy more real estate because you had an economy that collapsed and no bank was going to take on the risk of a new real estate investor, no matter how good their compelling vision was, right?
Right. You can't go to and say, I have a compelling vision, so you should give me a loan.
Exactly. They're like, you're already drowning in debt. You're in real estate. Real estate's failing everywhere. And you work for AIG. No. And so I gave up for a few years that I'd ever be able to be home with those babies. And it took a few years to go, now enough is enough. It's time to just find another way. The banks are saying no. So let's find creative financing. Let me figure out how to buy some properties without banks. So it took me kind of getting really uncomfortable that I gave up on myself before I said, okay, time to, put on the courage and step out, take a leap of faith and keep going. So I learned to get courageous and fully committed and develop the grit and the determination only through failing to do it the right way multiple times before I said, okay, I can really do whatever I put my mind to, but I got to be all in no matter what.
I love that. That is such good information. How would you, so what would you tell someone like right now during this, pandemic? It's getting better. The economy is getting better, but what would you tell them if they said, oh, I want to start a new business now? Looking at things the way they are, but still trying to be committed to what their dream is. What will you tell them in this time as far as starting a business?
Yes. What I'm going to tell you is don't feel like you have to hit a slam dunk home run right out the park, and don't go into big debt in order to start your business and your dream. Our biggest mistake that kept me from being home with those babies soon is that we started a business at the height of the economy because we thought it was just going to get better. And we were blindsided by it getting worse. But there's a proverb that says the borrower is the slave to the lender. Because if I owe them every hour I work, I got to work until I'm paid that much money to pay them. And then I still have nothing left for it, right? So I learned the big lesson of the borrower is slave to the lender, right? It took us years just to everything we made at AIG covered our expenses and then went to cover costs and the mortgage payment on my husband's business and my husband's SBA loans because his business didn't bring in enough money because we never dreamed that the economy would collapse and health insurance would collapse. Mm-hmm. So everything extra we made was just digging out the debt that we had gotten ourselves into before I could even think about it replacing my income. Right. So my biggest mistake starting that chiropractic business with my husband was that we didn't really understand economics at all. Mm-hmm. I had some basic information about when economies are up, then you sell. And when economies are down, then you buy. Well, it sounds real pretty and simple, right? But we have a very complex financial system, not just the US, but globally, and things that impact, how our economy does. And so there's so much unknown. And we are in a time in the economy that is uncharted territory. Right. It appears that things are getting better, but there's a lot of signs that things might actually be getting worse. But that all the free money the government has given us just keeps us feeling like we have enough and keeping on buying and spending, right? So what I learned is that no matter how smart I get, how experienced I get, there's always going to be something I don't know. And I need to plan for the worst and hope for the best. Not hope for the best. I need to not just plan for the best and hope for the best, but plan for the worst and hope for the best. Mm-hmm. So grow slowly. You don't have to be, if you're starting a bakery, you don't have to be, suddenly famous on the internet and you're selling everything to everybody all over the world. Start small, start in your kitchen, start baking your goods and start selling them locally. And then as you have enough consistency of customers, then you go lease a space. And then after you have consistency and you're growing, then you go buy the space and take out the loan. But grow slowly before you go into massive debt. Sometimes big dreams and excitements and big whys make us make financial decisions that aren't necessarily the best wise financial decisions. So that's really, I would say, the biggest thing. Start small and don't go into major debt until you've proven your business plan. And then slowly add the debt once you know you have a stable business.
That you really hit the nail on the head. That's really good advice for people that are trying to get started, especially now. Like you said, there's so many variables that we can't foresee. I mean, who would have thought we were kind of, treading along really well, and then the pandemic hit and everything stopped, Yes. So you're right. There's so many things that we can't really predict, and starting off slow and small is a great way to actually, come into your vision, whatever that might be. Yes. I had read something. You're a member of the investor community, and I am as well. And I read a piece that you posted about the 4 C's. And would you just explain to the audience what that is? Because that really is going to take care of the part of my podcast where I ask my guests to educate, motivate, and inspire entrepreneurs. Those are like the 3 things that I want my listeners to come away with. And your 4 C's hit on all of those: educate, motivate, and inspire. So would you please share that with them?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate that you read it and that it spoke to you as well. I was asked to talk to a group that I'm a part of, and they just said, talk to me about success. So I was a very small author in a compilation, kind of like Chicken Soup for the Soul or Resilience, that was called Success Habits of Superachievers, right? And we shared kind of some key success habits. What makes you successful? And if you could tell anybody, only one thing about success, what would it be? And as I really sat back and thought about it, I thought, what are the things that made me successful? Not that I knew this was the formula, but that if I could give the recipe to someone today, I would say, it's as simple as this, right? And I came up with a few things. And to me, extraordinary success, right? We all say we want success. And then because we're women, we're too hard on ourselves unless we think that we're super successful, right? So if we want extraordinary success in whatever it is, the first C is an extraordinarily compelling why. It's a compelling vision. And it's what we talked about. For me, it was, I am going to figure out how to be financially stable and then create enough extra so that I can be home with my kids. And that was my why. It wasn't, I'm going to create a super successful real estate business. I'm going to become a multi-family millionaire and I'm just going to pat myself in the back and sit on the beach and eat bonbons. Like that would not have motivated me enough when all these hard things happen. Exactly. A financial goal and a certain level of business success, if we're all really honest with ourselves, that's not really why we're doing it. We want a sense of purpose that we're doing what we're meant to be doing. So you have to have that super extraordinarily compelling vision that gets you up every day, that makes life worth living and your business worth doing. That's the first C. The second one is an extraordinary C, commitment to that compelling vision. Not just, here's what I hear a lot, Vera, is I think I'd like to start a bakery. I'm using bakers. I'm because I have friends that bake and I'm jealous because I can't and I buy their good cookies. But I could probably say I'd like to start a bakery because I love sweets, but I have no business starting a bakery, right? You don't wake up and say, I think I'd like to try this and we'll see how it goes. Because if you're just trying something, you're not going to have extraordinary commitment that allows you the level of grit and determination that you need to overcome every hurdle. So you have to make a full-on commitment that if I'm going to start this is a lifetime commitment to this business. This is a lifetime commitment. You're an attorney, right? You're helping people in real estate. You're helping people through financial struggles. If you said, I'm going to go to law school, I'm going to get that done, and then all of a sudden you have a really difficult client and you quit, you're giving up on your vision, right? And that passion. So you're not going to dabble in, baking cookies if you're passionate about helping people through their legal issues. So you must commit before you start that business, before you pour in your life and your energy and your time and your money and go invest and take on debt. You've got to make a commitment day one that this is a lifetime commitment, 20 years, 40 years, not I'm going to try it and see how I do over the next year. Right. That's not good enough. No. The third is really extraordinary courage. We have to have courage. And it's easy to say, right? Every time I do something new or that stretches me to the next level, I'm afraid. Deep down, I go, what if I fail? Right. What if this doesn't go well? What if I lose all the money we work so hard for, right? What if I'm not good at it? Or what if people don't like me? Or what if people laugh at me? Like, what if people don't support me? We all have fears every day. What if the economy collapses again? I think about that because I've lived through it twice with the pandemic and with the '09. And I saw my grandparents live through it before that. So I don't say, well, what if this happens? Then I'm not going to do it. Now I have the courage to say, if this happens, I have the commitment and the vision and the confidence that I will do whatever it takes to figure it out. And I'm going to trust God that he's going to be with me every step. And I'm going to walk in faith, confidence in that, confidence that I have everything I need within me to figure it out. I may not know how I'm going to figure it out, but I know that I'm committed enough to my compelling vision that I'm going to be courageous enough to ask for help from whoever I need help from to overcome that hurdle. So it's the courage in the face of fear, but I have to commit that I'm going to be courageous because I'm going to have to be courageous every step of being a woman entrepreneur. Sometimes it requires more courage than not, but it's a commitment to the courage just as much as a commitment to that compelling vision, right? The fourth one is really having confidence. And again, confidence and courage kind of wane. They're feelings, but they can become habits. Yes. And that's where I think I had to learn that. I used to, as women, a lot of us are very more emotional beings supposedly than guys, right? A lot of men think with their head. I'm very, I think with my head a lot, but I'm also very emotional. And so when things are really hard and everything's falling apart, your emotions are so heightened that you're not going to have courage or confidence. Right. So you have to remind yourself as a habit that I have to get in the habit of being courageous. I have to get in the habit of confidence. So one of the things that I started doing that really helped me when I was in a funk is I said, okay, I'm scared of this. Maybe I can't do it. But what am I good at? And what have I overcome in the past? And I started writing down my past successes the things that I thought were too hard for me, that I was able to succeed. When I first went to work for Bank of America and they said, do you want to come join us and we'll train you to be a financial advisor? I'm like, I have no experience. Like, I grew up in Section 8 housing. I don't even know how to budget my checkbook. And you want to train me how to, teach wealthy people about money? They're not going to listen to me. I'm 23 years old and young and blonde and have no money, and I doubted myself, and I didn't have an MBA, which they required. But I had enough confidence as that 23-year-old to say, I can take on the world and I'll prove them wrong. Yep. So I applied for the job, even though I was afraid and didn't feel like I was competent enough. I had the confidence to go for it. And the first year, I was the number one financial relationship manager in all of Texas. And I was like, I look back at that, even though that was half my life ago, literally. Right. I look back at that and say, I want that confidence today that I had as that young girl. And I showed myself and everybody else what I was capable of. I'm still that same woman, but now I've got experience and wisdom and more courage today than I had back then. So why am I self-doubting that I can handle this next thing? So remind yourself of what you've done and who you really are, and you'll build a habit of boosting your confidence and boosting your courage that will help you to fully commit to that compelling vision.
So much good information, so many wisdom nuggets in that whole thing. Thank you, Anna, for being on my podcast. I hope that my audience enjoys it as much as I did. It was really great. The Financial First Aid podcast is something that, as you said earlier, it was something that I just had a passion about, and I never did this before. So it's been people like you that have come on the podcast that have really inspired me to keep doing what I'm doing. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Oh, that means so much to me, Barry. I think so many of us have some great purpose that we just know this is something we're supposed to do, right? These are the people we're going to impact. And if we just all lift each other up and share our encouragement, our wisdom, it's amazing what women can do.
Yes. So tell my audience before we go how they can get in touch with you.
Great. So you can find me at Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn at Anna, REI Mom Kelley, or you can follow me on my website, which is greaterpurposecapital.com, where we invest in apartment communities to make a meaningful impact on the lives of our investors and our residents.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, REI Mom.
Thanks so much for having me, Vera.
Take care.
You too.